Good morning, everyone. I welcome to all participants who have joined us for this webinar today, which is on blockchain. I hope my voice is clear. Atul, can you hear me?
Yes, it's quite clear. Yes.
Great. So, people, myself Pallavi from NovelVista. I'm your moderator and host for this webinar today. It's been 2 months. We are delivering such great sessions on different topics. So today we are going to have one more excellent webinar on emerging topic, which is on blockchain. So people, you can use this chat option to contact us in if you have any query regarding our voice or any response that you are not having, then you will be using the same chat option while having the Q&A round. You can put the questions which will be answered by our speaker today. So I would like to introduce Novel Vista. We are one of the largest training organizations with huge portfolio of more than 2000 plus courses and team of 300 plus trainers who are associated with us. We know Vista since long time doing this knowledge sharing activity, and webinar is one of those where we have delivered 22 plus webinars since last 2 months, and your response is quite encouraging. So we are looking forward to have the same in future as well. So in this webinar series, we introduce our experts to our participants who deliver such great sessions. So for today's session, we are having one of the best leader in the industry, Mr. Atul Anand. So I'll be introducing Atul in a while. So before that, let me show you this image where you can WhatsApp us on this number where you will be getting all the updates regarding our webinars, our summit invitations, our offering from Novel Vista. So you can simply message us on this number. So you will getting all the updates from Novel Vista. Moving ahead, I would like to introduce our industry expert today, Mr. Atul Anand. Atul is a program manager at Toll Group. Atul is a digital leader managing application transition and transformation in a logistic company. He has experience of more than 14 years in leading IT service management teams in different multinational organizations across the world. He is a global MBA from SPGen School of Global Management. He has done advanced program in strategic management from IIM Calcutta. In his role as educationist, Atul Anand is a public speaker and has conducted several webinars, seminars, and information sessions on digital disruptions and IT services management in the digital era. He's an accredited trainer for Verism Blockchain Foundation and has trained multiple professionals across various countries such as Singapore, Hong Kong, and India. Atul is a certified digital transformation officer from Exine and one of the reviewer of the book, which is Introduction to Blockchain Technology, written by TIL. Atul has completed multiple certification on digital technologies, blockchain, ITL 4, Prince to Agile, Organization Change Management, Cloud Computing, ITL V3, Run SAP, SAP Solution Manager, and Atul has been awarded at various industry platforms where mentioned to some of those are like CIO 500 in 2019, in next IT Next 100 CIO in 2017, Best CIO in 2018, that is Digital Technology by Computer Society of India, and Innovative CIO in 2018. So Atul, we would request you to initiate this webinar. Welcome on this platform, and with your such a huge introduction, I would say it's a pleasure to have a leader like you to have as a speaker today. people are very excited to have interaction with you. So I'll request you to initiate this webinar.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Pallavi. I hope I am audible, right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
So I'll quickly hand over
Yeah.
this platform to you.
Can you make me presenter and let me know if you can see my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, give me a minute.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Pallavi, for good and rather great introduction. I must say that that has set a high expectation among the audience for me. But then I think, yeah, let's begin. So today I thought of starting this session because I see first and foremost is blockchain is one of the basic and most important digital technology. That is one part of it, but then the most important thing which I want to focus on this is trust part, right? Because see, we see that we are currently in the COVID era, right? And all the people are bounded at home, people are working from home, all people are logged in through remote. And so the reason why we are in such a lockdown situation is because see, somewhere something has happened which has broken the trust, right? So can we use technology, in terms of building the trust back? And can blockchain be one of the future fabric, right, which can help us build the trust, right? So that was a basic pretext of putting this subject as a as a webinar topic. Let me know, if you can see my screen always. And Pallavi, you let me know if if there's some issues in terms of audio and all. So as Pallavi has already provided some of the updates about me, yes, I'm one of the certified digital transformation officer from Axine GSDC Open SAP. It's one of the few people in the world to achieve this across, because it's not only through Axine. So I completed this badge from three different organizations or from three different certifying bodies. So that itself is a testimony that yes, digital transformation is one of the hot selling skills, and I think we should always think about it, and we should always think about uh, you know excelling ourselves in terms of building up our skills on these kind of technologies. Yeah. As Pallavi has mentioned, I have more than 15 years of experience. I'm an accredited trainer. I have written few blogs. I have given few webinars. The most important thing which she has not told about is I am a trained yoga professional as well. So I have taken yoga sessions across the world. I have taken sessions of yoga in Thailand, in India at various points and various times. So I was part of the International Yoga Day sessions, happening in my all organizations across. Yeah, so I was contributing back in that. So yoga is the biggest passion. Rest I do it just to live my earning and just to feed my family. Yeah. So in future someone asks what is the biggest thing which you want to contribute back, it would be certainly in form of yoga. Yeah. So so this is the high level agenda for day today. And we will be covering a few things on blockchain. We'll talk about the present and past and everything. Before that, Pallavi, you want to run through the first poll which we have it, so that we capture the pulse of people who are there in this session. And so I think there must be a first poll which is there on your screens now. And uh,
Yeah.
so
So can you see our first question?
I'm sure people would be
Yes, people are voting and we're getting different votes for different options. Let's keep poll open for next 30 to 40 seconds.
correct. And Pallavi, I can see this no more attendees allowed. So are you guys also able to see this pop-up? Because this pop-up is coming to me very frequently. So I think we have reached a maximum number of participants of 5, not 1, something like that.
Yes, we have reached our maximum capacity today.
Okay.
So
Okay. So I think another last 10 seconds, and then let's see.
yes, let's So I can see people are still voting. Let's wait for next 10 seconds more.
Okay.
So I'm closing the poll and displaying the answer. Yeah, so here is our answer.
Okay. So Pallavi, since you are my helping hand, extended helping help. So what is the pulse of the audience in terms of answers? What they have selected as in so
Well, answer it's correct as our question was what is blockchain, and we were having options as it is centralized platform for Bitcoin mining. It's centralized platform based on peer-to-peer network for record sharing, and third one for its centralized database for sharing the information in a secure way. So the second was the correct answer. I would say it is a decentralized platform based on peer-to-peer network share. So
yeah.
yes, like our audience are quite good in the having the knowledge for blockchain. So people are fortunate that they're on the very correct platform to go ahead with their basic to advanced knowledge for from this webinar.
Correct. Thanks, Palvi. This is the high-level agenda which we plan to cover today. So, we will be talking about the past, present, and how blockchain has evolved, and what blockchain is, what blockchain is not. So, these are the few things which we'll cover. We'll also talk about key elements of blockchain technology. We'll focus and throw some light on the types of blockchain network which is there. We'll spend some time on the next generation of blockchain, which is blockchain 2.0 onwards, and then few applications of blockchain in different industries, right? How they can use blockchain in different industry. So we'll focus on that as well. And certainly after that, we will talk about the benefits of blockchain, and we will also see the challenges and blockers of blockchain adoption, right? And we'll also say mistakes to be avoided during the implementation of blockchain, and then finally we'll conclude with the conclusion. Yeah. So this is a high-level agenda. So let me quickly go through this. So if you see this, right? So this slide basically talks about the evolution of money, right? And the reason I just want to start with this point is because see, we need to understand the basic fundamental, right? So if you see the history of money, right? So we very very long ago, like forever ago, so there used to be barter system wherein people used to exchange goods and things in return, right? So the trade was there in the nascent stages, and people used to exchange those items, right? So we had barter as one of the ways of identifying the value through exchange medium. And then certainly as human progress through the civilization, gold became one of the important aspect, right? So gold was one of the important commodity. And then when human understood the mining and minting of coin, so they made metal coins out of them. So gold was replaced by other metals as well, like silver, bronze, and those, and so on and so forth, right? So metal coins become more of a means of realizing value between between different people, right? And then subsequently in somewhere in 1700, paper money was circulated. That was a time when the first industrial revolution started, and then central authorities like banks came into existence, and they were the people who started rolling out paper based money. And then the paper money was more prevalent in industry. Certainly subsequently the past plastic cards, which we are using till now, till date as well. And then there's electronic money transfers, which is happening right through this NEFT, IMPS, those kind of things. And then latest in the chain is cryptocurrency, right? So that's basically history of money, and that's a evolution of money, right? And the reason why we have to focus on money first is because this is a tool which is used to establish any kind of trust within the society, right? So when any person do any kind of transaction, the trust needs to be created, right? And the value has to be realized, and the value can only be realized by any kind of medium, right? And that this medium whether it is in form of money, whether it's in form of any kind of instrument, right, is basically is basically endorsed by third party intermediary. And in most cases it is banks, right? So we have central banks who actually issues those currencies, who actually endorse that I give the bearer X amount of money and I pledge it, right? So that's how this trust establishing factor is done, right? uh, and see, if you see any kind of instrument needs to first generate value, right? So someone asks for a service or product and then you give some item in return, right? So the value is the most important thing, and once we have the value realized between these party, those the trade or any kind of service or provisioning can happen. Yeah, so that's a basic history of money. Let me quickly go to the next slide. uh, so if you see this next slide, right, this slide basically talks about the evolution, uh, of blockchain as such, right? So if you see, in 1998, Nick Szabo, he actually authorized, Bitcoin as one of the, as one of the virtual currency, and that was there way back in 1998. And he used proof of work as one of the ways of ensuring that this is done, right. And subsequently, all of us would remember the days way back in 2007, 8, right. So there was a great meltdown which has happened, right. There was a subprime crisis which has happened in US, and it engulfed the whole of the world, right. So it was basically, I want to spend a couple of minutes on that because it is an important milestone in human history. So it was a human greed which actually led to this crisis, right? Because people who, so there's a basic concept called subprime crisis, right? So people who don't have the respective credit score to get the loans, right, for buying a home, they were also allowed to, they were also given loans, and then they started defaulting. And so when they started defaulting, they sold or they repledged that loan to the other banks, and then they repledged, banks repledged it to the bigger banks, and then bigger banks repledged it to the insurance company, and certainly whole of the financial system got collapsed, and whole of the economy of US and certainly the world economy was at big risk at that time. So that was somewhere in 2007. So it was said and assumed that Satoshi Nakamoto, who was basically watching and seeing that whole thing happening at that time, he thought that can we have some kind of technology, can we have some kind of way for ensuring that this kind of third party intermediary, which are banks, which were supposed to be trustful, right? If they start defaulting, if they start taking things for ride because of the greed, can there be any mechanism to which can act as a savior, right? So Santoshi thought that, can the technology be a tool for establishing a trust? And then he wrote a white paper on, on the Bitcoin, Bitcoin technology. And then Bitcoin is basically one of the application which blockchain is, is working. And so blockchain is one of the platform, and Bitcoin is one of the many use cases which is there, right? So Santoshi wrote the white paper in 2008. Bitcoin came into existence in 2009, and if you see in 2010, there was the first transaction which has happened, right? So someone spent almost close to 10,000 bitcoins to buy two pizzas, right? So the cost of Bitcoin in 2010 was so low that you can only get two pizzas when you spend 10,000 bitcoins, right? So in 2011, it was like an historic day because Bitcoin reached $1 threshold mark, which was very important day for them. And then in 2012, Litecoin came into picture, right? So which was faster transaction speed than Bitcoin, and subsequently 2013 was an important day again. So the value of Bitcoin surpassed 1k 1000 US dollars in 2013. So till 2013 to 2017, the value hovered around 1000 only, and then suddenly somewhere in 2017, late 2017 and in 2018, the value started jumping up, and then it reached maximum to 19 to 20,000, and then it crashed down, right? So suddenly, Bitcoin reached its peak somewhere in 2018, and then it crashed down. So we all know what is the current value of Bitcoin. But then this session is not about talking about the value of Bitcoin, but then to give a brief about how it, how it started and how it moved ahead, right? So as I say, cryptocurrency started somewhere in 1998, and it is still there, and it will be there in future as well. blockchain is certainly not equivalent to cryptocurrency. Blockchain is not equivalent to Bitcoin, and certainly it is an underlying technology behind the same. And there are multiple use cases of blockchain, and Bitcoin is just one of them. And certainly, if blockchain technology could have been there during the time, we could have saved the crisis of 2007-8, and that was a basic learning which we draw from it, right? So next slide is basically talking about what is then blockchain, right? So as I see, right, so if you see this across, blockchain is basically a digital mechanism, right? So there are few things which I want you to pay attention on this, because it's a mechanism, it's a digital mechanism, wherein people can do transaction. It's a peer-to-peer network transaction, and it's more of a distributed ledger, distributed digital ledger, right? Some of the people say that it's more of a decentralized platform. They use concept called decentralized database. I will not say this as a database because it's more of a platform. It's more of a distributed digital ledger, right? So why I'm calling this as a ledger is because you record all your transactions in sequential format, and then you get all the logs, who has done what transaction at what point in time. There would be timestamping done across. So the right definition is it's more of a distributed digital ledger rather than being a distributed database. Yeah. And most important thing is it is a peer-to-peer network wherein people exchange the information assets without any need for any third-party intermediary, right? So in past, banks used to be the third-party intermediary when you used to do any kind of transactions across. Yeah. So that's a bit about blockchain. And as I say that, in blockchain, people authenticate and validate the transactions, and they basically keep a record of the information which is there, and it is all the people keep an independent copy, and it is all updated by the participants in the network through the centralized or through the decentralized network and the nodes across. Yeah. The most important feature is records are unchangeable, they are time stamped, and they are encrypted. And there is a concept of hashing through which you link each and every other block. And so someone also say that this is a linked list concept. Yes, certainly blockchain is a linked list concept because you link all your previous blocks in a sequential way, and it is a linked list concept in the data structures for sure. And currently there are more than 2000 transactions which get grouped together to form a block current. Yeah. So that's a bit about blockchain. So now let's talk about the strategic trends for 2020. So if you see the Gartner's report, and Gartner is one of the big four who actually provide the forecast of technology and trends, right? So blockchain is one of the top 10 strategic technologies, part of the top 10 strategic technology trend, right? So if you see, along with AI, automation, other things, blockchain is the thing which has to be staying in the market, and it will be there in the market, right? So if you see the business value which blockchain is estimated to create would be around 176 billion in 2025, and it will soar up to 3.1 trillion in 2030. So that is an estimation which Gartner have provided, that would be the future. That would be the kind of investment which would be going in this industry. So blockchain is certainly a future, right? Again, if you see the second graph, this talks about the hyper cycle of the blockchain. So all these concepts such as blockchain for lead generation, blockchain for customer services, decentralized automation, or decentralized autonomous organization, and so on and so forth, like blockchain in supply chain. So these are the technological trends which will be lasting for years. And yeah, it would be another 3 to 5 years, or 2 to 5 years, or 5 to 10 years, that these technology trends would be there in the market, right? So if you say, somewhere in 2010, people were talking about cloud. People were saying that cloud would be the go-to strategies for company. Right now, if you see, cloud is the buzzword, right? And so cloud started somewhere in 2010, and after 10 years now, cloud is the reality. Same is with blockchain, right? So we are talking about blockchain for so many years, and it will take another couple of years, and then it would be the hot selling skill like cloud, which is there currently, if you see it across. Yeah. So these are the strategic trends. Now let's talk about the key elements of the blockchain, and Why these key elements are important is because these are the key differentiators, right? And that's how we define blockchain, right? So these are key elements. Blockchain have basically distributed networks of people who are there, who are participating in the blockchain network. They are located at physically different places, right? So hence it is a distributed network. So it is not a co-located space. It's not a network like office kind of network. It's a location. It's a network which is distributed. People are sitting across geographies. People are there in different areas, locations, and that's the reason why it is called distributed network. So second important element is encryption. Yes, in blockchain we use encryption. We use private and public key, concept, right? So each and everyone would be having their own public and private key, right? So if you see in Bitcoin, so people use their wallets, right, for sharing the Bitcoin. So people have their wallet which acts as a public key, right? So that wallet ID is visible to all, and that wallet ID public key is mapped to a private key. And when these two keys match each other, then transfer of coins or transaction can happen, right? So encryption is basically using those public key and private key encryption for transferring any kind of values or cryptocurrencies. Yeah, so blockchain is basically using encryption as one of the mode for securing any kind of your transaction. Yeah, the next important thing is immutability. As we say that any transaction which has happened in the blockchain network, it is immutable. You cannot rewrite it, right? So if you want to rewrite it, you need to do a fresh transaction. You need to do a new transaction, and it has to undergo the same process again, right? So someone cannot change any transaction at his will, right? So uh, blockchain records all the transaction which has happened starting from inception. All the logs are kept, and all of these things have to be immutable. You cannot change it. There's no central administrators who can do any kind of changes. So hence it is immutable, right? So another most important aspect is tokenization. So tokenization is a concept by which you reward the people who do the mining, right? So different blockchains use different things, like so in Bitcoin blockchain, they give Bitcoins as one of the tokenization incentive. Ethereum, they give Ether as one of those tokenization incentives. So tokenization is basically incentive which helps people to keep this whole network intact, and to keep this whole network secure. So people do the mining, and they are awarded for their efforts by giving those kind of token currencies or cryptocurrencies for the work which they do, right? And the last important thing is it is a decentralized platform, right? So why it is called decentralized platform is because, see, there is no central administrator, right? So if you see this any kind of database concept, right? So we are all IT people. We would be knowing, right, database concept, right? So in database we have central administrator. There would be few administrator who controls the database, and who are having sysadmin passwords and all, right? But then in blockchain there is no centralization. So it's all distributed ledger. It is all distributed platform. So everyone have a copy of it, right? No one can do any kind of tampering. It is all tamper proof record keeping, document with them, and it is all decentralized. Hence, since it is not restricted to a single person, there is no administrator. Hence it is called decentralized network and platform. Yeah, so these are the key elements of blockchain. Now let's talk about specifically in terms of what are the different types of blockchain. And before that, let me quickly talk about few concepts which are important. I don't want to make this technical, because some of the people might lose interest, but then I will provide a few ideas, right? Let's assume that there's a network, right? Let's assume that we are using Bitcoin blockchain as a as a platform. So let's assume there are two people, person A and person B, and one person want to do a transaction. So A want to do, so A have, say, 10 Bitcoin in his wallet, and he want to transfer 5 Bitcoins to person B, right? So person B already have 15 Bitcoin in his wallet, and when A transfers that Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoins, effectively A will have 5 Bitcoins left, and the record of B would be 20, right? Because he already have 15 bitcoins plus 5 will become 20, right? So how this transaction happens in the Bitcoin network or in the Bitcoin blockchain, right? So when anyone initiate the transaction, right? So if this transaction happens in bank, there's a third party which is called, central bank, who checks that, whether a person A who's trying to do any kind of transfer, do he have the sufficient funds to do the transfer, right? So they check whether a person who is doing a transfer, whether the account of that person has a sufficient fund, and if it has sufficient fund, it allows that fund to be transferred across through, say, different forms like IMPS, NEFT, and RTGS, so and so forth, right? But then in Bitcoin or blockchain, there is no centralized authority who to do it, right? So how this happens? So in blockchain you have a few nodes. So as anyone and everyone can join your Bitcoin network, right? So those nodes are called mining nodes, right? So when any person do any kind of transaction, and Bitcoin blockchain is such a big vast network, so thousands of people who will be doing the transactions. So how those transactions get recorded in a in a Bitcoin blockchain is like, so those mining nodes, they actually compete with each other. They compete with different other nodes. So there is few mathematically tough puzzles which they solve, and the person who solve that puzzle first, and when they solve this puzzle first, they share the result that, okay, yes, I have solved this puzzle, and they raise a flag that, okay, I have solved this puzzle. So the person who solves this complex puzzle would be given the reward in form of adding a new block. And all these transactions, the transaction which is done by A to B or B to C or C to D, all these transactions would be correlated, and that person would be rewarded since he is the first person to solve those mathematically complex problem. And so this mechanism is called consensus algorithm. So they solve these different mathematically strong, complex problem. And there are different kinds of algorithms such as proof of work, proof of stake, and there are multiple other algorithms. So once one miner raise it, then other miners stop doing any work, and then they validate the result. And then once they validate that result, that miner would be given the block, bitcoins for doing that effort, right? And that set of transactions get added to a block, right? So that's how things get added to a blockchain. But then how the block of the previous block get connected to the next block, right? So there's a concept called hashing. So there are mechanism called hashing by which all these complex information or data, which is long data, get converted into standard one or two megabyte of information, right? So there are different kind of hashing algorithm. There are RSA1 hashing, and there are multiple other hashing. So I'm not talking about the technical parts of it, but then hashing is one of the mechanism by which you connect all your previous blocks, and you store the history of it, right? So that's how you propagate the information across. All the transaction gets stored, and miners, they basically use consensus algorithm to do the mining, and at the end of the day they get rewarded in forms of bitcoins, and bitcoins or ethers, right? So these are all part of token currencies, yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, like, now let's talk about the public blockchain. So public blockchain basically allows anyone and everyone to be part of network, right? So suppose tomorrow you want to be part of the Bitcoin network, right? Certainly you can be part of it. What you have to do is you need to have an internet, you need to be having a hardware, you need to have electricity, right? So you simply need an internet and hardware for doing it, right? And then you need to create your ID. Once you create your wallet, and once your ID is created, you are part of Bitcoin network, and then you can download the latest blockchain on the Bitcoin network, yeah. So that's about the public blockchain for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that's a public blockchain. So the next important type of blockchain is basically the private or permission blockchain, right? So these are the blockchains which are there for the enterprises, right? So wherein only the trusted parties are part of this network, right? So there are consortium of organizations who are basically working together to create that private or permission blockchain. And in this, they don't use all the concepts of mining, right? So you remember all the mining concepts which I talked about. There are five mining, there are five key elements, right? Which is say, which we just talked about in the previous slide: distribution, encryption, immutability, tokenization, and and decentralization. So all these five elements are not followed in the private or permission blockchain. Yeah, so they hardly uses few of the concepts of the blockchain, but then in public blockchain, all these five key elements are followed. Yeah. And as I also mentioned, since all these are trusted parties, so there's no concept of mining which is required, because you trust people based on the network which you are part of it, right? So examples of private or permission blockchain is R3 Corda. So that is a consortium of leading banks and insurance company. Same is the Hyperledger, Fabric, and there are so and so. There are multiple examples of private and permission blockchain. Yeah. The next important type of blockchain is hybrid and federated blockchain. So this is an interesting blockchain network, right? Because wherein you can be part of this network for sure, but then at what level you have to participate, that has to be controlled. Yeah. So anyone can be part of this hybrid blockchain, but then can they be only able to see the read-only data? Can they be able to contribute? So those things has to be controlled and federated. So that's the reason why it is called hybrid or federated blockchain. And the example of this kind of blockchain is Factum and Wave, right? So these are the blockchains which are there in use, and and in hybrid and federated blockchain, there would be hardly few blocks which will be acting as a mining block. So they are the people who have the power and power to process any kind of transactions. Yeah, so that's the reason why it is called hybrid and federated blockchain. Now let's talk about the next generation of blockchain, right? So obviously Bitcoin is generation one. So which was the which Satoshi Nakamoto and these people built up. So that was generation one set of blockchain. So the next set of generation of blockchain was blockchain 2.0, right? So in blockchain 2.0, there was a concept of smart contracts which was executed, right? So smart contract is basically a piece of code. So it's a language. It's a code written in programming language, and this piece of code is embedded in your compiler or your virtual machines where you compile your code, right? And once certain conditions get executed, once certain conditions get fulfilled, these codes get implemented by themselves, right? So Ethereum was an organization who used, and there are multiple other organizations who are using smart contracts as one of those concept. And smart contract is currently being in industry, it has been used very prominently, and they are one of the most important functionalities of blockchain. Yeah, the most important part of smart contract is, see, it avoids any kind of human intervention, right? So once certain conditions, certain thresholds are met, it automatically triggers by themselves, right? So so there are few stock markets who actually work on smart contract, right? When you write those scripts, right, and when once those stocks crosses that defined value, the script get automatically executed. So there are all examples of smart contracts, right? So there are a few exchanges in the world who runs on the smart contract, which is on the blockchain platform. Yeah. The next important wave of blockchain is blockchain 3.0, wherein that is even further more mature. So you use cloud nodes, you use open blockchain access, and you use small blocklets, and you incentivize for self evolution. So it is like self kind of healing kind of mechanism. And then blockchain 3.0 is still needs to be there in future, right? So there are organizations who are working in that regards, but then currently in industry, blockchain 2.0 is prevalent, and there are multiple organizations who are using it. All the smart city contracts are being used and worked upon through blockchain 2.0. Your autonomous vehicles are being used and worked upon through blockchain 2.0. So there are multiple applications of blockchain 2.0. Yeah. So now let's talk about the most important aspects, applications of blockchain in different industries, right? So, so you can use blockchain in your agriculture, banking, insurance, supply chain and logistics, healthcare, and medical industry, digital rights and e-voting and government, right? So these are the few industries wherein you can use it. So let me give a bit of background on government, right? How government can use the blockchain, right? So they can use their citizen services, like, so currently if you see an example, right? So Aadhaar is not currently based out of blockchain, but then yeah, in future, if organization want to, if government want to use blockchain as a platform, as a network, because in blockchain you cannot mute you cannot do any kind of changes in data, right? So it's like a tamper proof data, right? So if your Aadhaar number has to be kept intact, you can use say blockchain. But then currently our government is not using it. There are governments in different parts of the world. So Estonia is one of the government, in Estonia is one of the country when government is using blockchain as one of the platform for doing the services, government based services through it, right? So government can use it for citizen services, they can use it for business services, they can use blockchain for any kind of administrative task. Most important thing is land records, right? So if you see in India, across the world, there are so many frauds which happens through land records, right? Because people fudge the data, people manipulate the contracts, right? So if you share those, if you store those contracts or land records on the blockchain, then those you can have a history of the information, and all the audit trail can be maintained, and then you can always save that information and avoid any kind of frauds. So land record is one of the places where government can use blockchain as one of the use case, right? Similarly is in the case of healthcare and insurance sector, right? So people, currently uh, when any person is hospitalized, right? They have to physically give the copy of the bills and everything, right? To the insurance companies, right? But then if let's assume healthcare organizations and insurance companies, they are brought up all together in a blockchain network, right? Person need not to give any kind of hard copy of bills or discharge summary report, right? So it will save so much of hassle, right? So much of logistic hassles can be avoided. So once a person get discharged, automatically that information can float across to the insurance companies, and then there can be easier claim settlement. If you use those blockchain technology in the healthcare insurance sector, right? Same is with the case of case management. So let's assume a person who is suffering through a chronic health disorder, right? So he undergo a medical treatment in hospital, and let's assume there are consortium of hospitals who are part of the blockchain network, and so in that case he need not to carry any kind of hard documents, right? So all the information based on the request can be provided across through blockchain network to the respective other treating hospital, and all this data will be stored sequentially. It will have all the logs, it will have all the details, and certainly you will get rid of paper based documentations. So certainly blockchain can be of use in healthcare and insurance industry. You can use your clinical research, you can so if you see in insurance claims, right? When anyone is having any kind of accidents, right? So people used to provide their insurance copy, soft copy of insurances and your driving licenses, right? If all these organizations are there on blockchain, and all these data is stored on the blockchain, then automatically that information can be shared, and you need not to carry any kind of hard copy. Yeah. So same is with financial services, right? So see, if you see, the biggest problem banks faces is all about reconciliation, right? Why we have so many kind of frauds, like people, like, I don't want to name those people who, there are so many big fraudsters who have left who have left the country, right? So why these frauds have happened is because banks were not able to reconcile their accounts, right? Person has withdrawn the money was not there in their account, and by the time people tried withdrawing the money through their overdraft account, they and by the time they did a reconciliation in terms of the overall month end reconciliation, those people have already left the countries, right? And if we bring all these banks on the blockchain, then all these things can be avoided. There can be eKYC which can be done, right? So once all the required data is stored on the blockchain, banks can use this, and you need not to always. So see, how it happens is, whenever you apply for any credit card, you always give a signed copy of a physical copy of your your ID proof, right? And again, you apply for a bank loan, they will again ask you for documents. If you ask for any other thing, third product of bank, they will again ask for these documents, right? But then if all these things can be done through eKYC, stored on the blockchain, information can be retrieved, and multiple hazards can be avoided, in terms of follow up, in terms of financial services and fintech. So fintech is one of the biggest industry which can gain from this kind of blockchain network. Yeah, same is with supply chain. So processes like procure to pay, order to cash, track and trace, and recall scenarios can be handled very smoothly through this blockchain technology, right? So if you see currently in automobile industry, it takes almost 5 to 6 years to identify any kind of issues. If there's any kind of default or defective, say carburetor, or defective kind of ancillary or automobile body part, it takes 5 to 6 years to identify it, and again to recall them, and then it is a long and tedious process. But then if this all thing is there on the blockchain, and it is all captured through this supply chain blockchain, recall scenarios can be handled within few days, few weeks time, and it will help save automobile industry with so much of cost. Yeah, and same is with telecom players, right? So you can interconnect and you can use reconciliation and eKYC for doing any kind of you know validation and verifications. Yeah, so these are the few applications of blockchain in different industry. Let me now quickly go to the benefits of blockchain. Certainly, as I discussed, that blockchain is immutable record of data. So blockchain is almost tamper proof data set, which provides your confidence, because you are sharing the information across the network, but then you are using cryptographic algorithm which includes public key and private key. So it is almost immutable, and it helps you to share the data with more confidence. Yeah, again, simplification and cost effective measures, right? So we have given several examples that we can use this in the banking industry. You can use it in other industries to in a cost effective manner, and we can reduce the cost of intermediaries, right? We can use third party intermediaries who are acting as a brokers, right? By implementing smart contracts. So it can act in simplifying and reducing the cost, overall cost. Yeah, certainly it helps in transparency and auditability, because in blockchain so it's a linked list, right? It's a record of all the connected blocks. So and again, it's a distributed ledger. So so you can audit trail it. You can see what has, so if you see in Bitcoin, you can see the first Bitcoin, when was it generated, right? So the current size of Bitcoin is somewhere in a few hundreds of GBs. But then that Bitcoin blockchain still have the transaction of first, which was done when people use it. Yeah, so hence blockchain can use for audit trail and bringing more transparency among people and among systems. Yeah, and again, as I mentioned, it is more faster ways of doing international bank transfer, right? So I'll give a classic case. I was supposed to receive some international wire transfer from Switzerland. I'm giving an example. Although I don't have any black money in my account, I'm just giving an example. So it took me almost 4 to 5 6 days to receive that money. But then had it be on blockchain, things can happen through online, through blockchain within few hours, if not in few minutes. Yeah, so the transactions can happen in more faster way if we have all these things built on the blockchain platform. Yeah, so these are the quick benefits for blockchain technology, for using blockchain technology. Now let's talk about the challenges or blockers for blockchain adoption, right? So first and foremost is technological design flaw. If you see, there are still design flaws which are there in the smart contracts, and hyperledger is one of the smart contract Hyperledger is one of the blockchain which uses smart contract, and there was a hacking which has happened in hypercare in Hyperledger. So there are still design flaws which needs to be rectified. Industry use cases needs to be more more secure, and those design flaws needs to be needs to be worked upon. So those challenges need to be addressed if we want to use them in a wider industry use case. Certainly scalability is an issue. Yeah, so whenever you use any kind of blockchain network, you need to have network speed, and that speed should be in proportion to match the network of transaction which is happening, right? So there was a classic example wherein Visa and other, Visa and PayPal, they process almost, Visa process more than 20,000 or 25,000 transactions per second, and blockchain, Bitcoin is still in few hundreds transactions per second, right? So it's all about that network speed, right? So that needs to be matched to, help to ensure that, that transactions happen way on time. Yeah. Again, adaptability challenge. Why it is, there are, issues is because, in blockchain, if you see, classic cases, in Bitcoin, you have anonymity as one of the way, right? And it, anonymity features, it acts as a drawback, right? Because there are a few anti-social elements who do, transfer, illegal transfer of money through blockchain. So hence people are still skeptical in terms of, doing any kind of, transactions on blockchain. And there is no industry standards as such currently in place, right? Although there are blockchain consortiums being worked upon, which I gave an example in my previous slides. There is a blockchain, R3, Coda, and others, right? But then they are still limited in case, right? And as I mentioned, lack of adoption. People are, countries have still not adopted it because, they are there's lack of regulation. And see, to be very honest, blockchain is basically built with the concept that you decentralize everything, right? And governments are not interested in letting go of their power, right? So if you, so currently RBI in our case, right, that's a central authority, right? So tomorrow someone says that we don't need RBI, we use blockchain, right? So government will lose the control of on money minting, right? So hence government have its own vested interest, whenever, these things, get presented across to, for so hence there's a lack of adoption by multiple governments, and some of those governments have even banned them. Yeah. Again, last but not the least, there is a lack of skill set. So, blockchain is still in the initial nascent phases of adoption. Organization still needs to require gain those skills. There are hardly few people who are blockchain developers or architects or business users, right? So, blockchain, if anyone want to pursue his career in blockchain, he need to know the basic concepts of network, he need to know the basic concepts of database, and certainly any programming language, maybe C++, Java, or other programming language which are specific for blockchain as well. Yeah. So, these skill sets, a single person knowing all these skill sets is a painful task, and hence, there is a lack of skill set. And people who have this kind of, a person who is working on a working as a blockchain developer, a person having experience of 1 or 2 years, he get more than 20-25 lakhs, right? So that's how the, pay package of blockchain developer, right? So certainly, yes, you need to be well versed, and there are lack of skill set. But then I'm sure over a period of time, these things will be addressed, and people will be interested in building the career in blockchain. Yeah. Uh, Last but not the least, mistakes which has to be avoided while implementing the blockchain is like, see, we need to be realistic, right? When we are setting the expectation of blockchain, right? So blockchain is not a problem solver technique for everything, right? So it's not a silver bullet for every problem in your company, right? So there are a few use cases which can be used for implementing blockchain, but then in traditional organizations wherein you're using your VPN or your traditional networks, if you want to use everything on the blockchain in a company, in an organization, no, certainly it is not a good use case. But then yes, if you have multi parties and you have intermediaries, if you have multi vendors, and certainly there's a lack of trust, you want to use them, yes, you can use blockchain over there. Yeah. So we need to be realistic when we are setting the expectation, which is a classic case of blockchain implementation or which is not. Yeah. So we need to segregate those things accordingly. Yeah. We need to be estimating the timelines as well, currently, since there are hardly few use cases which are there in productionized blockchain. So currently it takes long time for using those blockchains or implementation of blockchain. But then there would be those cases, right? So if you say in 2010, 2011, cloud used to take a couple of months, right? But then now, anyone can go to Azure or AWS cloud, right? And they can roll out the their own instance within few minutes or few seconds. And same would be for blockchain in future, right? So currently it takes a couple of days or months, for implementing the blockchain in scenario. But then time would be, in near future, then you can implement your own blockchain within few days or not, if not in seconds or minutes. Yeah. So again, I always see, management team at times become impatient, when you are when you're implementing the blockchain, right, they always want to showcase any success story, and they want to showcase it to the boards that they have implemented blockchain, right? But then blockchain currently it is a time taking exercise, so you need to be patient. You need to ensure that all the right skills and ingredients are there in place when you're implementing any kind of blockchain project, or any kind of implementation. Yeah, again, this is like technology. Blockchain is anyhow a technology, right? So you need to undergo the organization change management process. You need to roll it out in the right way, right? So you need to undergo the process to ensure that you have early adopters. You need to have the right set of sponsors who sponsor those projects, and then adaptability is basically needs to be taken care, right? So OCM, organization change management, is an important piece whenever you are considering blockchain. So when we address these important issues, certainly you can implement blockchain when you take care of these roadblocks. Yeah. So let me conclude by saying that obviously there were multiple discoveries which has happened in past. So if you see, steam engine was one of the important discovery. Industry, mechanization, when Ford built his factory in a mechanized way, that was one of the important discoveries or invention of time, right? And same is with internet and blockchain, right? So people say that internet was 90s was the era of internet, and and 2020 or 20 upcoming years would be the era of blockchain. Yeah. So whatsoever transformation which internet has brought till date, blockchain have more potential to transform the lives of other people across within a short span of time, provided we use this technology in the right way, with the right forum and right side of mindset. Yeah. As I say that, no, it is still in the nascent stages of adoption, with billions of dollars being pumped in terms of investment and R&D. So most of the products, most of the use cases of blockchain, they are still in the R&D phase, right? People are trying to evaluate them. People are failing fast. People are, using small use cases and see that whether it is working, if it is not. Yeah. So there's lots of money being pumped in this industry for sure, and I'm sure in near future there would be multiple success successful project in the implementation. Yeah. And last but not the least, if you see blockchain, when we combine with the cloud computing, IoT, AI, and ML, it can certainly change the face of the world. And these are the digital technologies which are bringing transformation and transition in different organizations and people and life of this planet at large. Yeah. So that's the end of my uh, webinar. And so Pallavi, uh, do you want to run through those two polls, the questions which are there? Pallavi, you are there?
Yeah,
Mm,
sure. I'll just quickly run the poll.
yeah. Before we
Okay, so
start with
second
the
question we would be having, I've launched it. So here is our second question. What the features of the blockchain? Yes, people are voting. We'll keep poll open for next 10 seconds. All right, so we got our answer. I'll just display the answers. Yes, so we can see 94% people has given vote for decentralization, immutability, distributed peer-to-peer. So I guess it's a right answer. So do you want to say anything about this, Atul?
No, so I am saying that people heard my webinar, you know, uh, by paying 100% attention. I'm sure, and people would be knowing it before as well. But then the most important thing is, yes, knowing the features of blockchain is important. And yes, as correctly mentioned, that the data record is immutable and it is a decentralized kind of platform. Yeah. So that was the second question. Pallavi, you want to quickly
Great.
go through the third question uh,
Yes,
before we start
I'll,
with the.
I'll, yes. So here is our third question.
So Pallavi, I'm hoping that people are answering the third question as well.
Yes, so we got our answers. I'm just sharing it. So we can see 58% people have voted for blockchain is almost tamper-proof, which is the
Correct.
right answer, I would say. Anything you want to say on this?
No, correct. So that was a tricky answer, right? No. So people consider that blockchain is a tamper-proof. No, it's not. It's almost tamper-proof. So there's still a concept called 51% attack, which also exists in blockchain as well. So although it is practically impossible to hack or to replace the data of 51% of nodes, but then that possibility is still there in in theory, right? So hence that it is blockchain is almost tamper-proof. It is not completely tamper-proof. Yeah. Okay,
Thank you,
so
Anand. So,
yeah, so
we'll,
before we
yeah,
start,
so
before
before going,
continuing, yeah, so you want to talk about GSDC and
yeah,
yeah,
you can.
yeah, okay. So to be very honest, I started my blockchain journey somewhere in 2017-18 when GSDC first arranged a webinar, and or it was not a webinar, it was basically it was first of a kind of uh, uh, you know it's a gathering wherein people or like-minded people gathered and people discussed about blockchain, and and that's how I gained my interest, and that's how I did my first certification in 2017 and 18. And I certainly like GSDC because GSDC, they have a range of uh, blockchain certifications, whether it is like say certified blockchain professional, you have certified blockchain architect, that's for architect. So you have Ethereum developer, that is basically for developers, and there is a certified blockchain hyperledger developer. So there are certifications for developers, few certifications for professionals, few for the architects. And I started my journey on blockchain from there, and then I did other certifications as well. But then yes, I'll certainly say that the GSDC is one of the good certifying authority, and then we should start building our skill set by being accredited, or by completing few of those certifications if you are interested in that. Yeah. And that's how you can be more industry recognized. And as I mentioned, right, blockchain is a skill which is currently being in demand for sure. So that's a bit about it. Anyone have any specific questions? Anyhow, we are exceeded the time by 3 minutes, so I'll uh, let's talk and take any questions if there are any. So we'll take only a couple of questions, and then
Yes,
we.
so people, you can ask questions. We can keep this Q&A round with 2 to 3 questions. So you can please post us with the questions. So Atul will answer it very quickly.
So I think if there are not, then I think it was a good session. I must say that I really appreciate presence of so many people across, and I'm sure you guys would have also gained, and I'm sure some of you are already experts in it. It is just a refresher for you. And I thought of sharing my perspective on blockchain, but then this is more of a foundation concept. If you want to build, there are tons of material which is available, but then it is always good to start from foundation and build your skill set, and then further you can always build your career on top of it. Thank you everyone, thanks for your time. Let's catch up sometime later as well. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you
Pallavi.
so much, Atul. Thanks a lot. It was amazing sessions, and you have almost make us gone through the thorough journey of blockchain, where you have discussed on past and present of blockchain features, types, application, how this application can be used in different sectors. So it was really amazing session. Thank you so much for delivering this session, and I would like to thank all our audience who had participate to join this webinar. So some of people couldn't join. So we will be sharing our recording link with you for this webinar, and will be keep you engaging. Will keep you educating for all next webinars in future. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Atul.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Take care. God bless all. Bye bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.